Welcome everyone to the SciManDan podcast, the place where science and conspiracy collide. We're on episode 10. Thank you all very much for listening. I just want to say to all of the regular listeners, thank you very much for listening from the start. If you don't know yet, if you're a listener and you're not a YouTube watcher, the podcast also has got a YouTube channel as well. Just search for the SciManDan podcast on YouTube and you'll find it. Unfortunately, Katz can't make it this week, so his jingle will remain unplayed until he returns. So let's get going and we'll get our guest on ASAP. Right, joining us this week is a professor of astrophysics in the physics department at Oxford, established author and presenter of the BBC institution that is The Sky at Night. It's Chris Lintott. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Before we get into everything, we've had a bit of a big thing happen, haven't we, in our skies with Saturn and Jupiter, the conjunction, haven't we? Anything else big coming up soon in the world of astronomy?
Well, I mean, it's the start of a new year, so it's always a good time to think about what's coming up. I think at the minute, this time of year, you've got, in the northern hemisphere at least, it's about the stellar sky. So this is a great time to go out and look at the Milky Way,
yes,
which I think people are surprised. You could see, even I live in the middle of Oxford, and I can see the Milky Way from the back garden. We've got the Perseids are good this year, which is the big meteor shower in August. And if you're a penguin, then December the 4th, there's a total eclipse in Antarctica,
nice,
which I think will look amazing if anyone can get there.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we'll entertain the wildlife. But I think so that's looking at the sky. I'm quite excited. We've got Perseverance, the new NASA rover, and a couple of other missions arrives at Mars in about a month.
Yes.
Later in the year, we've got the launch of a probe called Lucy that's going to the Jupiter Trojans and the James Webb Space Telescope with any luck. So it's a big year.
I sent my name on that Perseverance, did you?
Oh, good. Yeah, my name's on there.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? There's no logic to that whatsoever.
No.
But there's something nice about knowing that your name is on a spacecraft that will hopefully
yes,
land safely on Mars.
My wife woke up the other morning. She said, "Oh, I've got an email here saying that something about Mars," and I'm like, "Yeah, don't you remember we put our names down?" She said, "Oh, yeah."
Well, it's better than waking up to find you bought a one-way ticket on Elon Musk's slave ship or
good
whatever.
Point. Yeah, good point. Chris, you've been involved with the Sky at Night since the year 2000, haven't you? And it's fair to say you probably have got a prominent role now presenting the show. Was it ever your goal to be this involved, or was it initially just guest appearances and stuff that interest you?
Oh, the Sky at Night is the kind of random chance that you're lucky if it happens to you once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I grew up watching the show, right? As a astronomy obsessed kid, I grew up watching the show, videos of past shows, and sort of that's where my astronomy came from. And so to have any involvement was amazing. But no, I sort of fell into it. They needed a researcher, somebody to sort of translate the astronomy for the production team. I got that job.
Yeah.
And then Patrick Moore, who was presenting, was very generous and said, if there are things that the show should do that I can't do, he was beginning to find it a bit difficult to travel and so on, go and do it. And so I really got to do what no one gets to do anymore, which is that I got to be terrible on television. I watch some of the early stuff now. Yeah. Everything from I haven't ironed my shirt to I still speak quite quickly. But, so I got a chance to learn how to do that on the show that was already being broadcasting. So it's been the ride of a lifetime, but it was complete and utter luck that I was in the right place at the right time.
Well, I don't want to say anything, but I don't want to say that anything is going on here. But Dr. Becky came on the second episode of the SciManDan podcast, and a week later she announced she was going on the Sky at Night. So there's a bit of a correlation. No, I'm only joking.
Yeah, well, you probably know that Becky was my first PhD student.
Was she? She didn't mention that.
By the rules of academia, anything she does now, I can take credit for.
You can claim, absolutely.
That's right. So I'm waiting for my share of her YouTube checks. But but Becky's just brilliant.
Yes,
I think
she is. Yeah.
She's got exactly what you need to be a science communicator, which is the ability to take something very complicated and cut it down to something very, very simple that you want to understand. And the other person who had that was Patrick Moore.
Absolutely.
I always say with Patrick, the rest of us, if we say, I'm going to tell you about black holes, a large part of the audience says, I never understand this stuff. But if Patrick or Becky say, I'm going to tell you about black holes, you go, oh, good, I've always wanted to try and understand this. And there's this connection that they're shared. So
definitely got a lot of energy,
see that. She'll be chuffed with that comparison, but it's true.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, she will be chuffed. That's the thing I got from her, is that how much get up and go she's got about the topic. So she's like always enthusiastic about it. And if you do that as a day job as well, and you're doing it in your spare time, it just shows how much she loves it. Yeah, no,
it's absolutely as it should be.
Yeah. You mentioned Sir Patrick Moore there. I mean, when I first knew of him, I was a young gaming fan in the mid-90s, obviously games master. When I first became interested in astronomy in my early 20s, it was a very pleasant surprise to know that he was an astronomer first and foremost. So what was it like working with Sir Patrick?
Well, firstly, on the Games Master thing, I think that's a lot of people had that experience of Patrick as a floating head. And so I was quite pleased when we did the 50th anniversary program for The Sky at Night. We decided that was too easy, so we made the 100th anniversary program as we envisaged that it might be. Okay. And we had Patrick appear as a floating head.
Oh, wow.
Having been uploaded into a computer at some point. So that was our tribute to Games Master, because I grew up in that sort of era as well. So that was fun. Patrick, as I said, he was a brilliant communicator, and he was exactly the same off camera as he was on. He liked to talk. He liked to follow his enthusiasms. He had a wicked sense of humor. Maybe we'll talk about this later, but he had his brushes with conspiracy theories and winding people up who believed in various things. But he as long as he was the center of attention, that he was the most fun person to be around. But he did need to be the center of attention.
Oh, brilliant! That's better. I used to work for a not very well known fuel company, and they had a petrol station in Selsey, which is obviously where he lived. And I remember once I got the opportunity to go. There was an opportunity for someone to go down there, and I was like, I'm going down there just so I could say I've been like near his house.
Well, people would turn up from all over the place, partly because he'd invite anyone who called on the phone. So we used to film down there, and it was this extraordinary thing that the doorbell would go, and it could be a Norwegian television crew, or it could be 200 scouts who were expecting a tour of the observatory, or it could be 10 old friends he hadn't seen for years who wanted lunch, and sort of the household just revolved. And it was... I'd grown up in Devon, not from a particularly academic family. Okay. And so to be in this place where it was about conversation and it was about ideas was wonderful. And I think ended up shaping a lot of who I became. Just that experience of being around a bunch of mad people who just wanted to talk about space and about ideas.
I mean, I imagine it was that for a lot of people.
I think that's right. I mean, there are plenty of people who wandered through.
Yeah. What was his like? Because his knowledge of the moon was second to none, wasn't it? What was that? How much did he really know about the moon?
Oh, well, he knew everything. I think he'd spent so long looking at... So the thing that Patrick did that's almost a dying art was that he would sketch
drawings,
the eyepiece.
Yeah.
And I don't think he would have claimed any great artistic merit. But the thing that does, if you've had that experience of spending time with your eye on a telescope, trying to sketch faint features, it really makes you look, and it really makes you understand it. It makes you... It's quite interesting. You can draw things you can't quite see. Okay. Because what happens if you look through a telescope is the Earth's atmosphere will move, and so the image will go in and out of focus. You get these moments of crystal clear seeing that you're almost not aware of. But if you spend enough time there, you can pull out the best bits, and you can create an image. And so once you do that, the moon or the planets or whatever you're drawing becomes an old friend. And I guess the modern equivalent is spending forever doing the post-processing. Some of the astrophotographers do. No, so he really did know his stuff. He would claim to be self-taught, but he knew as much, certainly about observing the moon as anyone.
Yes, yeah, definitely. You personally, I've read that you specialise in the chemistry of star formation. Is that right?
That's what I did my PhD in. I got a bit distracted by other things.
I bet. Yeah.
But yeah. So I was an astrochemist.
This is something in particular that I am fascinated in. I fondly remember learning about different stages of fusion, etc., during the higher mass stars' life and things like that. it's beautifully simplistic, isn't it? Can you explain to the audience as succinctly as possible how a high mass star will go on to potentially seed a new star and planetary system?
Yeah, so this is the We Are Stardust thing.
Yes.
So the universe starts off very simple. This is why cosmologists have the easiest job in my business, because the early universe is incredibly simple. And all you have is hydrogen, helium, and a little sprinkling of lithium. And that's it, the three lightest elements. And when you look around here, there's not much hydrogen, there's not much helium, but we've got all this carbon and oxygen and nitrogen and stuff. And so what happens is that these things are produced in the cores of stars. So our sun is turning hydrogen into helium, but later in its life, it will turn helium into heavier elements, and bigger stars will go even further.
Sure.
And so at the core of a massive star, you end up with these heavier elements. And then when the star reaches the end of its life, however it ends, those can be redistributed to the surroundings. And then you seed the next generation of stars and the planetary systems that form around them with the heavier elements. So everything that you can touch, wherever you're sitting right now, came from the inside of a star or was produced in things like supernovae or massive explosions. I rather like the fact I found out this week that if you've got any gold, if you've got a gold ring on or anything like that. So we think that comes from an exotic explosion, a collision of two neutron stars, which causes something called a killer nova, which is kind of a great name. But there are only something like 5 or 6 solar masses worth of gold in the entire galaxy. So you could, if you rounded up all the gold in the galaxy, you could make 5 giant gold balls the size of the sun, and that's it, which in a galaxy that has hundreds of billions of stars is quite something.
So are we saying that all the gold on Earth is from that one collision?
No, we think so they've happened over time. We don't know. One of the big problems in this research is we don't know how well the galaxy is stirred.
Sure, yeah.
So we don't know how well mixed these things are. Actually, we know with gold that it's not very well mixed because different stars seem to have different amounts of that sort of element that's produced that way. But we know that the stuff around us has been in at least 2 previous stars. So the sun is a 3rd generation star. So this cycle has happened at least twice before.
In the local vicinity of space,
and we're just the recycled leftovers.
Yeah, that's good. It does make you think, doesn't it? Like, what was there possibly a solar system before ours that had life and ended up,
maybe if you think about the timeline, the universe is about 14 billion years old. The sun is about 5, so there was time to have at least one sun-like star just form and go through its cycle. So the sun will live about 8 billion years, but it's more likely that they were massive stars because big stars live fast and die young. So probably what we're talking about is a very big star that lasted for only a few million years, and then maybe something like Deneb, with bright star you can see in the summer sky, tens of thousands of times the mass of the sun, maybe lasting for a few tens of millions of years, and then in a giant explosion that scattered that stuff through the galaxy. So you could try and understand the history of our Milky Way by doing a bit of archaeology, by looking at what's around us today, and then picking up the signatures of the stars that were here in the past. So this is a large. I mean, none of this is what I worked on. So when I was an astrochemist, I was doing the other end of things. So I was doing as a gas cloud collapses to form a star. It forms molecules. So this is astronomers tend to annoy chemists. So the process we just described of forming elements is often called chemical evolution. But this is real chemistry. So in those clouds, you form things like ammonia, things like alcohol, things like hydrogen cyanide. And studying those molecules tells you a lot about what's going on in the process of star formation. So that was my original line of research. I got very interested in sulfur compounds, which no one else cared about, which is always a good way to find something to research. If you find the thing that no one else cares about, you're ahead. So I worked on that for a while and then got a bit distracted.
Is that related to Jean's mass with the interstellar clouds?
So the Jean's mass is, there's a sort of this is the thing. So to form a star, you need to take a gas cloud and you need it to collapse under its own gravity. And the Jean's mass tells you how much stuff you have to have for that process to happen. But the other factor that people forget is that it has to be cold, because as you heat up some gas, the particles in the gas move faster.
Sure.
And so if you think about it, if you've got a gas where the particles are moving rapidly, they're not going to collapse under their own gravity. They remain in sort of a cloud. So you have to cool everything down, and you do that by forming molecules, and those molecules emit light, essentially, and they radiate away heat. And that's the form of cooling that makes stars possible. So that's the crucial process. The details that I got into star formation because I love the fact that the one sentence description of star formation is sorted. Right? Gas clouds cool, they collapse under their own gravity, and they reach a critical density so that stars can form.
Yeah.
If you try and write a paragraph or a page, we don't know any of the details.
Okay.
We don't understand why stars are the size they are, what triggers the collapse, how often they form stars once the process starts. All of this stuff is up in the air, and that's why I liked it. It's a beautifully complicated problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So how, like you said about it being possibly the third generation, so after there's been a supernova or whatever, how long are we talking before temperatures get down to the required after that event?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what must happen is that the debris from the supernova has to get mixed in with the existing, what we'd call the interstellar medium, but the stuff that's left over. Because don't forget, the solar system, if you ignore the fact we live on a planet, the solar system is mostly hydrogen, because the sun is mostly hydrogen.
Yeah.
And so you've got to get that from somewhere. So this is really about seeding pre-existing hydrogen gas with all of these other molecules. So it's less about the cooling and more about how much time it takes for that mixing to happen as stuff orbits the center of the galaxy and moves around. Yeah.
Fascinating. What would you say is the most exciting thing going on at the moment with astrophysics?
There are lots of things. I think for years I've been telling people that the most exciting thing in astronomy is the discovery of planets around other stars. The fact that we know, when you go outside and look up, that most stars now have planets going around them.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that 5 years ago. I think that's remarkable. And the way that those discoveries are changing our ideas of how our solar system evolved and changed. Is it just because we've learned from these other planets? We've seen spectacular arrangements of planets that we didn't expect. Things like Jupiter-sized planets that are very close to their star. And so we're sort of getting the idea that the early years of a solar system is a chaotic place. So I think that one of the facts that haven't really got into the popular books yet, that I don't understand why not, we think in our solar system there may have been 30 things the size of Mars knocking around.
Wow.
And most of those will have been expelled or collided. So you can explain lots of the solar system by this, but that's a very different picture.
Absolutely.
Than you get from, the nice orrery with the planets rotating forever around the sun. If you have 30 of them and they're interacting and hitting each other and being thrown out of the system, you have a much more chaotic history for our own solar system. And we learned that by looking not just by looking at the solar system, but by looking out at the distant universe. And so that loop is really exciting.
So correct me if I'm wrong on that. I mean, the only ones we're sure of are the ones where the planets are in the plane with the star, with the dimming of the light. So I imagine the systems where they're not like that, there must be...
Yeah, so that's part of the logic. So you're right. We do have a few other examples. There are some where we're actually able to see the planets move because we can block the light out from the star. And there are a couple of other methods. But most of them have been found, as you say, by a blink as the planet goes in front of the star. And you're also right that requires a cosmic coincidence, right? They have to line up. But you can do the maths and discover, I think you discover for planets that are closer in than the Earth, you find only a few % of orbits would happen, if they're randomly distributed, would happen to be in alignment. So you can multiply the number of planets that we found by a factor of 20 or 30 or 40. And that's what gives us this confidence that planets are really common, because we keep getting lucky and spotting planet after planet. On that, by the way, there's a nice recent discovery. There's a nearby star called Tiergarten star.
Okay.
I think it's maybe the third nearest star, something like. No, it's a bit further than that, but it's about 10 light years away.
Pretty small.
So this is cosmic neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it has planets, and they are in the same plane as us, just by coincidence. So if there are astronomers on those planets, they will see our planets going in front of the sun.
Wow.
And they'd be able to discover us using the techniques that we've got now.
And we'd
so
never
that's
know.
my favorite sci-fi setting now. Is that's
that
where
is brilliant.
Proxima Centauri, that's where we should be looking for aliens.
I'm stealing it. I'm stealing that idea.
Have yourself.
Yeah, I had we had Jim Al-Khalili on episode 5, and I pitched him my book idea, which was because he's wrote a couple of novels about sci-fi, and it was about the Earth getting hit by a giant asteroid, and it slowed the rotation of the Earth till it was in synchronous rotation with the sun, and there was only a tiny little the Terminator line where people could live and they'd survive. I'm using that now. I'm stealing.
That's the old Twilight Zone idea, right?
Yeah.
So people you probably know, people thought Mercury was like that back in the day.
Yes.
Because Mercury has this strange day that's longer than its year.
Yeah.
And so people thought it was locked. And there's all sorts of great Victorian science speculation, really, about what life would be like on such a world.
Brilliant. So, Conspiracy Cats, who's the guy who normally who's co-host with me, we are both people that try and debunk conspiracies on YouTube using science. And a lot of those people have a strong belief that space is a fictional place, doesn't exist. So how does that make you feel, considering what you do, that there's people out there genuinely that don't think space is real?
Well, I have questions.
Yeah.
For starters.
Right. Well, I'll be the space denier because I know a lot of their answers.
I guess I need to know what you mean by not real.
Okay.
I think.
So one of their big things is that they cite the second law of thermodynamics as to why there can't be an atmosphere next to a vacuum through entropy.
Okay.
I mean, obviously they don't
because magic pseudo-physics reasons.
Exactly, yeah, and they don't subscribe to gravity, so they're not taking gravity as an answer why the atmosphere sticks to the planet. So in their eyes, it should be sucked off the planet.
Oh, I see.
So
because gravity doesn't exist either, or something like that. Right. Yeah. Okay, I've got you. Well, first of all, I think your people are interested because I encounter these people mostly because they send me theories of the universe.
Okay.
And I don't have a lot of space doesn't exist. I have a lot of I can explain quantum physics using one handy trick type people.
Yeah.
And a lot of retired engineers who can play with numbers and write 150 pages on how they've explained everything. But your question was how does it make me feel? In some way, I don't know if we're going to agree on this. In some ways, I kind of admire it.
Okay.
Right? Because
I'm listening.
I think the worst thing is not to care about science. Right? So the people who upset or who frustrate me are the people who don't even think about the universe. Because I think that I just think it's sad to go about your life. I'm not saying you have to care passionately. I'm not saying you have to understand what an asteroid is, but to not look up at the night sky or not to wonder what that might be is really difficult for me to understand.
Yeah.
So I think at least the average conspiracy theorist, the people who aren't doing politics and causing trouble, at least they're trying to understand the universe. And often they're trying to understand the universe by trying to make observations. Now, or at least, they're using aspects of what they consider common sense, right? And so, but the error they make, of course, is that the universe doesn't care two figs for our notion of common sense, right? And science, the scientific progress, such as it is over the last 400 or 500 years, is continual realization that common sense is wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think the most interesting thing is why they believe so strongly that they should be able to explain the universe.
Yeah.
Because the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, every morning, is the idea that I can spend some of today, I spend a lot of it doing email and paperwork and all the rest of it. I can spend a bit of today trying to work out how the universe works.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
Yeah,
and I'm under no illusion it's common sense. So I don't know. Is that too sympathetic? Presumably,
no.
Do you just think they're wrong? And
no,
obviously they're wrong.
Yeah, well, I agree with you in some ways, because what Katz and I often say is that a lot of them would make great scientists if they didn't have these preconceived notions before they did any sort of experimentation. There's I mean, have you seen the Netflix documentary with the Flat Earthers?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because of the way that they talk about, those people that once you invest in an idea, and this is true of mainstream science as well, right?
Sure,
once you're invested in believing something, then evidence that's shown to you will convince you that you're right.
Yeah,
that's just a human trait. Yeah. I think that's correct. I think the thing that really does anger me in the way that conspiracy theorists often talk, though, is the way they talk about mainstream scientists.
Yes,
because
completely agree.
The typical letter I get or the video that you see will say, closed-minded scientists don't want to think outside the box. And honestly, there are people in the building that I work in normal times that have three crazy ideas before breakfast, right? The idea that mainstream, I can show you the papers, the idea that mainstream, look, if there was half a chance that the universe was made of donuts, there'd be 7 theory papers out by tomorrow morning on exactly what it means and whether the donuts are frosted. Because that's the game that we like to pick, right? We get a lot. So we've got this idea that most of the matter in the universe is made of dark matter, right?
Yeah.
There's stuff that has gravity and interacts, but which we don't understand. And a lot of the people who write to me want to get rid of dark matter, and they're convinced that we're all invested in it because we're on the side of dark matter. There is no one I know who wouldn't rather
not have to deal with it.
Weird, right? If we could get a crowbar, because the problem with gravity, well, there are many things wrong with gravity, but one of the things wrong with gravity, apart from the fact it makes going to the moon inconvenient, one of the things that's wrong with gravity is that we understand it too well and not at all. Right? So Einstein's theory does a really good job of predicting a whole load of stuff. So that doesn't give us many clues about how to advance our theory.
Yeah.
So if we could get rid of dark matter and say, but gravity doesn't work like Einstein said, almost every physicist in the world will go, brilliant, let's do that, let's get grants, let's research that. We're not close-minded. We'd love that to happen. Trouble is, Einstein was pretty clever. The theory's pretty good, and we haven't found the crowbar that lets us in.
Yeah.
So the idea that there's this obvious common sense idea out there that we're all ignoring because we're too close-minded. That's what annoys me.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Not that these people are trying to come up with a theory of gravity. That seems fine. They're wrong, and it's fun to think about why they might be wrong.
Yeah, they're wrong, but they won't go. They won't go back to the drawing board. That's the thing. They're wrong, and then they continue with being wrong. They won't say, right, well, hang on, let's try something else.
Yeah, and I guess if you spent time, as an anthropologist of these things on YouTube, I guess 50 years ago, that would have manifested itself in badly photocopied theories sent to physicists at university departments. Yes. Now it manifests itself in, YouTube videos and an audience, I guess.
And that's one of the things that me and Katz were talking about, that some of these YouTube channels have 50, 60, 70, 80,000 subscribers who are watching these people talk about what they think is going on. And in a way, we were saying the problem is the amount of those subscribers that are watching, not necessarily the people that are propagating these theories.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a worry, which leads me on to this question, actually. A survey last year found that 3% of people from the UK believe the Earth is flat. Now, firstly, does that surprise you? And secondly, have you personally had experience with flat earthers?
I haven't had a lot of flat earthers. I think they just don't come anywhere near me, to be honest.
They've got two.
I get UFO people, and I get quantum deniers, and I get people who think that the LHC is destroying the world, and I get a lot of people who want to tell me about aliens. But I don't have a lot of flat earthers. I don't think that 3% is very surprising. I remember Bill Bryson, who's this brilliant science writer and writer of all things.
Love him.
I remember him talking. He got a whole newspaper column out of a survey that said that. Let me get this right. It was something to do with whether I think it was a survey of American women, whether they wear tights above or below their underwear.
Okay.
And 5% said they didn't know. And he got this whole column out of the fact of like, how don't you know?
Yeah.
Right? For starters, wouldn't you look?
Yeah.
Strange example, but there is this one. I think 5% of people will say yes to anything in a survey.
Yeah.
So that, if you did a survey of the British public and said, is the Loch Ness monster going to appear on Strictly next season?
Yeah,
you get a higher than 3% yes. So I think we're doing okay there, actually.
Well, the other problem is, I guess, that if you're on one of these paid survey sites, you might just go click yes all the way through, won't you, just to get the money?
Which then, of course, generates newspaper headlines and so on. So I think 3%'s okay. And I guess the lunar that often ties to people who don't think we've gone to the moon,
big time.
And that I think is more widespread.
I think that's 1 in 5. 1 in 5 have a doubt. I think,
and I have a doubt. So this is what we're saying. I think there's this core of people that make the videos in your case or write to me. And they could, they're the people on the Flat Earth documentary. And, if they want to play at being a scientist, then fine. But it's those people who it plants the seeds.
Yes, exactly.
And, I meet a lot of people who say, is that who don't believe we didn't go to the moon, but know that there's some question or think they know there's some question, and that's the kind of thing where I think it's damaging, because then that can easily bubble up into a general distrust of the scientific world, and we've seen in the last year where that takes you.
Exactly.
So I think you're right. It's about talking to the other audience, but then I don't think we've got a very good. Maybe you've got a better understanding of this than me. I think it's hard to design ways to talk to people who half believe something.
Very hard.
Without pushing them further into believing whatever it is.
It is.
And that's tricky, right? Because more evidence might not do it.
Absolutely. And I think I've made almost 200 videos trying to explain why people are wrong about flat Earth. And I've had maybe, and this is in about 2.5 years, I've had personally about 20 messages saying that I've changed their mind. That's
pretty good going.
It's good, but it's low considering I've had 90 million views in total. So it's a pretty low percentage. And I'm not saying, there might be more people that haven't messaged me and said I've changed their mind. But that was the idea that when we first got into it, we're aiming at these people who are watching the YouTubers. We're not trying to change those YouTubers' minds themselves.
Well, you might be changing the YouTube algorithm, right? So it may be that those views are coming from people who would otherwise have been directed to. So there may be a sort of blocking thing. Yeah, but I think that the best way to change somebody's mind, it's very difficult to engineer, but is to be the person they know anyway. Yeah. So I where I have life beyond astronomy. So for example, we don't need to turn this into a sports podcast, but I follow 3 pretty obscure football teams. Okay, who are they? I'm a big football fan. Who are they? Oh, good. Okay, so I grew up as a Torquay United fan. Hey, they're all right. We're top of the league currently, so this is good. I'm a Chicago Fire fan. Okay. Which is a whole other story. All right. And I've picked up Borussia Mönchengladbach because I had to watch something. So I don't know if I can get it was down. So that's a recent one. But there are communities around those who know that I'm interested in astronomy, and they know me from behaving slightly like a lunatic and screaming at players. So I often get, when something happens in the news to do with astronomy or to do with any of the stuff, I'll end up in a conversation with those people about astronomy, because I'm their go-to astronomer in the same way that, if I need to understand how to fix a car, I know which of my friends I'm calling. Yeah. And so I think you have to, I think maybe where videos like yours can help is they can arm all of us who are anti-conspiracy to have the argument, so that when our family or our fellow Torquay fans or whoever it is want to talk about the moon landings, we know what to say. Yeah. And I think so there is that sort of secondary effect that you should credit yourself for, I think. Yeah, I guess so. I think the most important question there is, are you the most famous Torquay United fan, or does Helen Chamberlain pip you? Helen Chamberlain wins, I think. And Peter Cook, before he passed on, was a Torquay fan. Was he? So I'll bow to both of those. You're up there, yeah.
Now
we've just lost your entire audience. I spent the Venn diagram for non-league football.
I'm a Southampton fan.
Okay, nice.
And Katz is a Blackburn Rovers fan. And we've got this little joke where I try and find Katz on a live stream, because he does a lot of debates, Katz, on YouTube. He debates for Earthers and Space Deniers and stuff like that. And I try and jump on a live stream and I'll say, question for Katz. And he'll say, oh, here we go. SciManDan's got a question for Katz. And it'll be some obscure loaded question about how bad Blackburn are. And the answer is always Blackburn. And every single time I find him now, I think I'm starting to annoy him now. But right.
Yeah, you have to be careful how these passions overlap.
Yeah, I know.
There we go.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to play Guess the Conspiracy. So this is the part of the show where Katz and I have both come up with a fake conspiracy, and there's another one which is a genuine conspiracy which people actually believe. And your job is to try and select the one which is the real conspiracy. Now, I don't want to put pressure on you, but it's currently 5-3 to me and Katz. So you've got to do this for the guests. Right, here we go. Number one. Large basalt rock formations, such as the Devil's Tower in the US, are actually the remaining tree stumps of giant petrified ancient trees. That's number one.
I want that to be true.
Number two.
I know the game is. None of these are true, right?
Well, we're getting good at making them up. So, number two. London is actually an island off the coast of the UK that is not represented on any map and which houses the elite of the world. The city we all know as London has no real name. That's number two. That's conspiracy number two. And number three, Neptune does not exist. It was a scam to help verify the false maths of gravity.
Oh, that's all good. Those are all good.
So there is one that people genuinely believe.
Or claim to believe.
Out of these three, yeah.
The London one is so obscure that I don't know. We haven't talked before today.
No, we haven't.
But the London one is, if you've made that up, that's genius, because it's obscure enough that I'm not sure that would come out of your head.
Okay.
On the other hand, it does sound a bit like a random conspiracy generator generated it.
It does, actually.
I think the London one is, I think people believe in.
You think that's the real one?
London. I think London is offshore and the city we know as London has no real name. That's weird enough that I think people believe that.
Okay, is that your final answer?
Yeah, the logic is, so the tree thing, I want that to be true, but I don't think it's interesting enough. And the Neptune one, why Neptune? None of the planets exist, sure. Yeah, no, the Neptune one. I think picking on Neptune isn't a very conspiracy. It's not a kind of interesting planet for conspiracy theorists. They'd say Mars didn't exist. Okay. So yeah, I'm going with London. London does not exist.
Okay, here we go. We've done it again, Katz. I know he'll be listening. We've done it again. So the one you wanted to be true was true. The Devil's Tower in the US, there are all of those sorts of formations. People genuinely believe that they are the petrified remains of ancient giant trees.
Well, I now believe that. I think you've convinced me that this is true, and that's going to have implications for alien life, all sorts of things.
Yeah, it will.
I think there is a use for conspiracy theory, because I think it is quite fun to play the game of, if I believed that, then what?
I know. Yeah.
And it's things like, do you know, you must know about the aquatic ape hypothesis.
The aquatic ape hypothesis. Have I heard of that one?
So this is an idea that bubbles around on the fringes of biology. So the idea is that many of the things that mark us out as humans compared to other primates, like the fact that we're not very hairy, evolved because we were semi-aquatic creatures.
Okay.
And it's sort of a fringe idea. There's not much evidence for it. It's a whole load of just so stories, right? So you can, so to debunk that idea, a bunch of researchers came up with the Space Ape Hypothesis, which is the idea that we evolved the way we did so that we could exist in zero gravity.
Perfect.
And it's just brilliant. Yeah. It's a useful tool. Inventing your own conspiracy theories is a good tool to think with, what I'm saying.
It was me that came up with the London one, so Chris Lintott called me a genius for coming up with that one. I'll take that. I think Kat's thinking on the Neptune one was some of the flat earthers and space deniers are quite well versed on their gravity, like history of gravity. Like they knew that Neptune was supposed to be there because of
because Uranus was
exactly
in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think that's what he was going with that one. But
no, I think that makes sense. But I haven't heard many. I'm going to keep track now, but I hear conspiracy theories about Mars, Venus, Saturn, because it's got this weird hexagon that people keep telling me no one can explain, and I send them back papers that explain the hexagon, and that's not okay.
And they don't read them.
But and Jupiter's kind of, but no one ever comes up with conspiracy theories about Uranus and Neptune.
So
it's nice that they get a shout on your show.
It is.
That's good.
So that's now 6-3 to Cats. We are storming in the lead. We were 3-1 down at one point. And what?
Who scored for our side?
Jim Al-Khalidi got it wrong as well. Dr. Becky scored. She got a point. James from was it James from I can't remember now. Amy from Vintage Space. She does a YouTube channel called Vintage Space.
I know Amy. Yeah.
She scored, and I can't remember the other one. But ever since, I think we've got like 4 in a row now. We're just getting too good at predicting them.
By the way, for your spin-off podcast talking to astronomers about football, Becky's a Bolton fan.
I know. When we found, because obviously Cats is Blackburn, and we found out, we're like, bit dodgy here. Anyway, Chris, thank you very much for joining us. It's been absolutely fascinating chat. Really appreciate it. Where can we find you on your Twitter?
I'm Chris Lintott on Twitter.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm on Twitter almost all the time. So come send me your conspiracy theories about Neptune would be particularly welcome, please.
Brilliant. We'll get some of those sent over to you. We'll pop it all in the description as well. But for now, we're done on episode 10. Next week, we have Seek Truth, Speak Truth, who is an ex-flat earther. We're going to interview him about coming back to the globe side. But for now, we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.